Yes. What? Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. Thank you so much for joining us. This week, we've got the breaking Kentucky political news, specifically covering the big news from the primary elections. Then we've got a great returning co-host to help us sort it all out. We'll get a Kentucky union update from the president of the Kentucky AFL-CIO, Dustin Reinstedler. Then finally, we'll close out with a fun call to action. But first, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? Let us think back a few Novembers ago, shall we? Last November, we reelected Andy Beshear, which I think was a great moment for our Commonwealth. The November before that, we rejected an effort to strip abortion protections from our state constitution. November shows that when push comes to shove, folks in Kentucky come together for a for a kinder, more compassionate Commonwealth. Unfortunately, there are still supermajorities in Frankfort that just don't care about making regular folks' lives better and are prioritizing giving tax cuts to rich folks and sending whatever's left over to private schools. It's clear there's still lots of work to do in our state to win better electoral outcomes for our Commonwealth. Between now and this November, 100 and we'll say 68 days from now, we're going to be focused on doing just that. We hope you'll support Progress Kentucky in our campaign for a more compassionate Commonwealth. Please go to our Act Blue website to make a contribution right now. They're secure. They add up anything, $5, $50, $500. We appreciate it all. And none of it is tax deductible. So let's go ahead and get into our show. Check in with our co-host. Let us know who you are, where you are. What are you protesting today? You there on the internet, we want to hear what you're protesting as well. What's your sign say? Put it in the chat while we are sharing ours. I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg in lovely Lexington, Kentucky. My sign today says, if you didn't vote, you can't complain. So apparently 87% of the state needs to STFU. Because that's right. That's what we had for our turnout. 13% of voters made it to the polls this week, finishing up this week. You could have voted earlier, but not that many people did. So 87% of the state cannot complain. All right, let's check in with our co-host. Martina, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Hey, I'm Martina Jackson. I'm in Richmond, Kentucky in Madison County. And my protest sign says, voters can do more than vote. You can encourage young people to register to vote. Let's activate young voters, especially for November.
Nice. That is far more positive than mine. Well done.
I'm gonna get in motion, you know.
All right, and then rounding out the co-host this evening, Nate, are you there?
I am, and getting rounder by the minute. Yes, hey folks, this is Nate Orshan coming live and direct from Kit and my home in South Frankfort. And my sign tonight is a little bit of a big one. It's going to say, shoot, gosh darn, get off your duff and help a local candidate this summer. It doesn't rhyme, but sometimes you have to sacrifice for democracy.
I was sure it was coming to a rhyme, and so let down. Yeah. Help folks out this summer, or the fall. I'm just gonna say it. I feel like campaigns are too long. I truly believe campaigns are too long, and I understand that there's no legal reason that you have to not campaign starting like immediately, but just people get tired, and they're not paying attention anyway. So I don't know. All right. So hey, should we check in on what happened this week in democracy in Kentucky?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So first, I want to start on the one that we were, I don't know, most active in. I don't know. We played a role in. So the 6th district of Kentucky 6th district, centering in Fayette County and the surrounding counties. Not Nate's anymore, unfortunately. But that was for the 6th district, the Democratic primary. Really a super close race, and I think we should take a bow. I think our forum really helped interested voters vet the candidates because no one else seemed to be paying attention to the race. And the way it stands right now, and if you watch the forum, you know a bit about these candidates. But Randy Cravens has a couple hundred vote lead over Todd Kelly, who has about a 400 vote lead over Shauna Rudd, and then with the other folks kind of coming in pretty close, fairly close behind, right? So Jonathan and Dawn. So just really well fought bunch of grassroots candidate campaigns, really working hard to let people know about the race and their candidacies. Randy issued a really, I think, just thoughtful and intentional statement in response to what looks like, a win. I think he's definitely the presumptive candidate for the Dems in that district, lining up to take on Andy Big Banks Barr in November. He's gonna, it's tough. It's a very hard district to win. But I think Randy's running for the right reasons and has a lot of good ideas to share. So that's, that was one that obviously, a lot of people were paying attention to. And we'll just watch and see. I mean, we'll get Randy back on the show for sure. Talk about why he's the better choice than Andy Barr, which I think many of us know kind of inherently. But yeah, I don't. Do you guys have any thoughts about that race?
I would agree in terms of seeing a 5-way primary. I thought that was pretty cool to see each of those candidates, taking, a risk to go out and publicly put their name out there. And so agreed. Seeing Randy Cravens with his post today, being really thoughtful about how you talk about the other candidates, but also being united, I think, is incredibly important after these primaries are over.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, no, I just want to echo what Martina said, especially that last point is like, now, okay, well, there's some sour grapes maybe from some people losing, but it's time for all of us to come together and support whichever Democrat is on the ticket, because it's going to take some work.
Yeah, lots of work. Yeah, I think none of these candidates were a Jeff Young type, really. Ultimately, I think like, so there weren't people who are like, oh, that what happened. Okay, well, I guess we're gonna need to find something else to do than vote Democrat on that one. So
and one more thing. And is it a coincidence that Chris Priest, who had run, last time around, is conveniently out of the country at the same time?
Likely story, Chris. He says he's out of the country.
No, he is. China, baby. Woo.
All right, and then let's see. Speaking of Jeff Young, he moved his focus away from the Lexington congressional district to the Louisville congressional district, where he got smoked by Morgan McGarvey. So we don't have to worry about him. Morgan cruises to that renomination, and actually don't know if there was a Republican running or not. I imagine there probably is, but I don't really know. And then if there's anything, there wasn't really anything interesting in the other, kind of congressional races. Hank Linderman beat Bill Compton for the, we'll say third. You're right. It's the third district.
Yeah.
Thank you. So they'll be taking on Brett Guthrie. Hank will be taking on Brett Guthrie, I believe. And both those guys have kind of been active in Democratic politics and have been candidates for an awfully long time. I'm not sure what changes this time, but they're definitely intentional about how they run their campaigns and really want to get the word out and not just appeal to Democrats but also to Republicans, which is smart because you have to in a district like that. But we'll be a little bit to watch that one. And then let's see, were there any other like notable in the Congress? I don't think there was anything terribly interesting to note in the other congressional races. Massey had some candidates. Yeah. Massey had some, had a couple of folks contesting him, including somebody who run for governor, so theoretically had some name ID, but I think they're all kind of from the same side of the political spectrum up there, and Massey just cruised to renomination there as well. So let's just take a look at the kind of house races in the legislative districts. In Lexington, the 76th district. This was, I think, one of the interesting ones. So Ruth Ann Palumbo, longtime representative there, was retiring. I think she tried pretty hard to hand off her seat to her son, Jamie Palumbo, I think diving coach at Bryan's Station. And but this three-way race, and Dawn Worth, who's an Emerge graduate, she prevailed in that three-way race. She's now the elected rep, as there was no one, I think, running. There's no Republican candidate, right? So Ann is the elected representative. The final tally was, I think, Josh Buckman, who's a good friend of Progress Kentucky. He's a social worker. He was a write-in candidate 2 years ago for a state Senate district. He came up short. He had 18% of the vote, with Jamie coming in with 41% and Ann with 44%. I think this is an interesting one because it's a good test of the kind of super grassroots campaign that Josh ran, with like lots and lots and lots of door knocking. If you know Josh, he does a lot of door knocking for other candidates in the previously, versus the name ID that Jamie Palumbo had. I think there are a lot of signs that it wasn't really clear that what the first name was. It's just a lot of Palumbo out there, versus name and a little bit of all the above. So the Emerge training may be making the difference for Ann, but I think everyone agreed all three of them would have been kind of great representatives up in Frankfort. But I was glad to see Josh jump in first to say, yeah, well, we should have a race for this. It shouldn't just be handed off. I think Ann was a good candidate and will be a great rep. So, and then one other district that we've been watching. This is the 93rd district. Again, Frankfort. Adriel Camuel had been in there for just part of the session. Replacing Lamine Swan, tragically lost to his life, versus Sarah Ritter, who was challenging. She was kind of coming from the Young Democrats wing of the party, I guess. No nominee for that seat. Adriel won handily, and so Adriel will be heading back to Frankfort in January. So, anyone have thoughts about those races they want to mention, or Martina, do we just want to go on to the 91st?
So with the 91st district, I had an interesting experience with this that I will get into a little bit later. But we had incumbent Bill Wesley and challenger Daryl Billings duking it out in a 3-county district that is Madison County, Madison, Estill, and Powell County. They, you could consider Bill Wesley as part of this kind of Liberty Caucus group, but mailers being utilized during this ads in any campaign season, but being targeted with messaging like, "Who is the real conservative?" Much of which is parroting coded rhetoric about outsiders, anti-trans, anti-choice, when it comes to healthcare for women. But the margin was pretty close. Bill Wesley barely squeaked by with this win, and Billings had endorsements from some major people during this race who was a challenger, but he had endorsements from congressmen like Comer, Andy Barr. He was endorsed by the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of money was poured into Billings, but he didn't pull through with the W this time. Back to what I was saying earlier about the mailers, I landed on 2 mailers that were sent out to target voters with this particular race, that were basically to say, look at this person supporting someone who is progressive. Are they the real conservative? And it really was a pretty bizarre experience to not be running for anything. And, back to being just regular old me and not a candidate, and to end up on mailers. But the voters have decided to barely send Bill Wesley back because he lost in terms of not having the majority of votes in both Madison and Powell County, but he made up for it in Estill County with the votes that he was lacking.
So wait, you were on 2 mailers where they were like, look at this radical who's taking a picture with, like, was it with, you were in a picture with Bill Wesley, is that right? Or
I was in a picture with Daryl Billings. And when we had taken a picture back in 2022, and it was really just, I had stopped by a local business. I introduced myself and said, I would really appreciate your support. Who's to know if this man actually voted for me? We don't know. But that picture was then circulated as a look who this person is supporting.
Wow.
But I think it's interesting that it did backfire in the sense that he did not win Madison County. Bill Wesley did not win Madison County. So, perhaps that was, and I think it was a poor choice to, circulate that.
Yeah, vilifying you, as like, oh, clearly we can't trust this guy because he dared to take a picture with somebody who was running for office who came by his business. Like, it's just outrageous. When you're running, candidates take pictures with about anyone while they're out there, like, on the stuff, right? Like, correct. So it's an indication of, I think the ethics of the, whoever's using that photo, if they're using that photo, right? Yeah. I remember Andy Barr used a photo of a clerk of court in Winchester. I'm trying to remember the name of this woman. She's probably still there. Awesome. Like, one of the first Black elected clerk of courts in Clark County, for sure. And, he used a picture of her and him together, like that, she was like just at the parade he was walking in, and like his campaign took a picture of her and him together. Like, she is a staunch Democrat. There is no way she was supporting Andy Barr, right? But he was still using it, right? So it's just kind of slimy. And it's unfortunate. And, I hope it did backfire, because that's poor form. But like they say, politics ain't bean bag or whatever. I don't know. All right. So that was an interesting race. And then let's see. Jumping back to Lexington area, the 77th district. George Brown held on to his seat. A longtime legislator there, despite his challenger, who was actually endorsed by the Lexington Herald leader, the Daniel Whitley, and a local attorney. He ended up with 37% of the vote, with George Brown claiming 63%. Another contested primary that I think was very interesting in Fayette County, the Republican race for the 45th district. So this I think is remarkable. Thomas Jefferson, no, not the Thomas Jefferson, knocks off Killian Timoney. Really destroyed the incumbent, who tried to walk a kind of moderate line, right? So Thomas Jefferson, this not a no name because his name is Thomas Jefferson, but it hasn't been elected anything. I don't know what kind of perspective he brings. Like I don't know anything about the guy, but he had 68% of the vote to the incumbent's 32% of the vote. So no space in the GOP primary for a vaguely pro-trans, vaguely pro-teacher voice. So this one, I think Adam Moore is set now to go head-to-head with this vehemently pro-public dollars for private education, anti-trans, liberty wingnut. I like this race a lot more now. I think it looks like a great pickup opportunity for Team Kentucky. But yeah, that was crazy for sure. You guys, either y'all have comments on any of these races?
I'm just curious as to which counties are we talking about. Do you have a rough idea?
For the 45th district?
45th, yeah.
That is all. It's a Republican held seat that is, I think, entirely in Fayette County. Correct me if I'm wrong. There might be other elements, but I think it's all Fayette.
I think it's largely Fayette County.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So that's that's one that I think folks have been looking at for a while as one that could swing the other way for sure. We can look into that. I'll do it. I'll look at it when you're doing your segment. But yeah, so super low turnout. Voter turnout did not hit 15%, despite the Kentucky Secretary of State saying that. Can assume there are many reasons for that, given there were not U.S. Senate races happening. Nothing really. I think, yes, there was the, presidential primary, but, that's a race that's already over. And so there wasn't anything that kind of locally was really at the top of the ticket driving lots of turnout. But Kentucky saw a voter turnout rate of 13%. Several local races were happening, in fact, across the country, and across the county, Kentucky, sorry. I think, Nate, you got an interesting race that you wanted to draw a little attention to.
Yeah, well, a couple. So I just wanted to focus on two that are close to my home in Frankfurt. So first of all, we had a decisive win for Chantel Branscombe, her District 56 House Democratic primary. That covers Woodford County plus parts of Franklin and Jessamine. And as of late this afternoon, the Frankfurt State Journal had reported that she'd received 66% of the vote to Denicia Miche Branscombe. Whoops. I got the names wrong. Anyway, to her opponent, 34. Oh, yeah. Bingham Branscombe. It's the bees that are just throwing me today. Sorry about that. Anyway, Ms. Bingham has a great variety of relevant experience. First of all, she was elected to the city council in Versailles in 2022. And then she's been on Midway's Planning and Zoning Commission. And there's this. She is the first Black executive director of the Versailles Midway Housing Authority, of Versailles. I'm jumping ahead of myself. And also she has prior experience in this is a long one, Versailles Midway Woodford County Human Rights Commission. So she has a pretty strong background in human rights and housing, which are good traditional democratic values. And on top of that, she's got experience being willing to work through some of these details that would make most people's eyes glaze over. So she is ready for the State House. Also, pro-reproductive health rights, passionate about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. She's basically our people, right? Unfortunately, going up against incumbent Daniel Pfister, whose unfortunate-sounding surname did not prevent him from beating Joe Gravis in 2020, and then the great ex-mayor of Midway, Grayson Vandegrift, in 22. And that was by a significant margin. I think it was 56-44. So it's going to be a tough one, but this is one to throw some support to. It's pretty special. Speaking of pretty special, it gives me great pleasure to announce the end of an error. Yes. Republican incumbent Senator Adrienne Southworth, representing District 7, got only 22% of the Republican primary vote. Although, according to the Lexington Herald Leader article I read, it wasn't clear which of her two competitors won. They're both hovering around 38 and 39%. But nevertheless, she is going to be gone come November. Senate District 7 had been redrawn, so now it includes part of Anderson County, Henry, Shelby, and part of Jefferson. The thing that for me is really sort of a personal warm fuzzy is that I went to one of Southworth's horrible election denial tours performances a couple of years back, and was just sort of shocked that someone who had elected office was this much of a opponent to democracy and an opponent of the 2020 election and fair elections. I'm not wording it well, but the point is she is just bad crap bonkers. And just, and it's not just me. I think a lot of her fellow Republicans think that too. Even our Republican Secretary of State, right, Michael Adams, is not a fan of hers and has been sort of publicly against her. So I guess in a sense she had a strong headwind against her from her own party. But man, it's so satisfying to see someone who's so clearly out of their gourd getting kicked out of office. So that I'll leave everyone with that. My warm fuzzy.
Yeah. No, the Republicans did not like her. They did not want her to continue to be in their party and in their, caucus there in the House. And and definitely, they put her desk with the Democrats, I think.
I missed that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Like her desk
goodness.
in the Senate chamber was with the Democrats. Like they're like, oh, this little we don't have room for you with us, so you're gonna need to be over here. They did not like that woman.
I found it really interesting. One, because she was undermining. I'm like, not you're undermining your party, but you're undermining the premise of which you won an election. So it's like 2 and 2 is not adding up to 4 whatsoever in this equation. And seeing the repeated efforts to do these PowerPoint presentations to say it reminds me of like the meme where it's like everything's calculating behind the person and it's still not making sense. And I'm like, that's the impression that I got when I was seeing those things. And then of course, like you said, Secretary of State was just like, what are you doing? This is completely, off target as to what we want to promote in our elections. So, very interesting observation to say the least.
Yeah. And I don't know that that's a competitive seat. I think it's probably not, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in November. I think, there were some other kind of contested primaries that turned out, I think, interesting, right? So Senator Gerald Neal, who's of course in leadership and has been in Louisville's delegation forever. Attica Scott ran against him. And Attica, who of course is, I think a well-known political figure, and I think is not afraid of using the primary process to run for things. She did not prevail in that one, and he, I think, fairly sizable, lead there. Also, I think who else we saw. There were just some other races that were pretty competitive. Daniel Grossberg, who's been on the show in the past.
Oh yeah.
He had a really pretty close shave getting back into his seat for the 30th district there in Louisville. But yeah, it was interesting night for sure. And I think there might be some pickup opportunities for the Dems besides Adam Moore. And on that front, kind of corrections corner here. So there is Jessamine County in the 45th district, which of course Abigail came up with. So appreciate that correction for sure. So it's a lot of Fayette County for the 45th district, but there's Jessamine County over there as well. So all right. So I think we should be good to check in with our guest. This is exciting time for me. If folks have watched this show over the years, we've always really been interested in the labor union perspective on kind of what's going on politically, what are they up to, and this is a new guest for us, though. We've had the Kentucky State AFL-CIO leadership on a few different times, but Dustin Reinstedler is the new president of the Kentucky State AFL-CIO, and we're really fortunate to have him spending some time with us this week. So, Dustin, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. We're really happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So, you're new to the role. We're thrilled that you're here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you ended up as the Commonwealth's AFL-CIO president, and kind of how things are going with Kentucky's AFL?
Sure. So I joined the Bricklayers Union in about 2005 as a brand new apprentice. I had never laid a brick in my life. I had a lot of family in construction, though, from great-grandfather, grandfather, great uncles, everybody, all union, but decided that I wanted to try my hand at masonry. So joined the apprenticeship, did a 4-year full apprenticeship, worked in the field for, I guess, until 2014, when my retiring union rep stepped out. I was hired to replace him. Became vice chairman of my local, sat on all kinds of just about every board and committee and stuff they asked me to, tried to be pretty active. A few years ago, I became president of the Kentucky State Building Trades Council, and that's kind of where I began to know Bill Lonergan a little more with the AFL-CIO. Began to work with all the area CLCs around Kentucky, lots of other labor leaders, politicians, all that stuff. And then I guess about 6-8 months before Bill was going to retire, we were at a convention together, and he tapped me and said, "Hey, let's go outside and talk." And I was kind of happy where I was. It seemed like really a huge leap and a great responsibility. And if you know Bill, gigantic shoes to fill. But here I am.
Awesome. Well, welcome to it for sure. And we had Bill on a number of times. Definitely, super knowledgeable, really passionate, really just a great union organizer at the highest levels for sure. Also, we never really had to prepare very many questions. We just would ask the one, and then he would just go.
Yeah, he's talented in that regard.
That always points out for sure. But speaking of questions, I think Nate's got one for you.
Okay. Yes. Well, welcome. So happy to have you on here. So, this has been a really exciting time for unions all across the country. I know that the UAW won a landmark deal with the big three automakers, and we're sort of starting to build some momentum here in the Right to Work South. We had that first ever union vote in Tennessee for the VW plant there. So now organizers are hoping to continue this with a union organizing in Alabama at a Mercedes plant. So with all this activity going on, how are you thinking about these campaigns? And also, what do they mean for our own Southern right to work state here?
Well, it certainly is energizing, not only union leaders, but workers, people looking to organize. It's really cool that you're seeing all these, what we call bottom up campaigns, where it's literally just a group of workers coming together and either straight up forming their own union or picking up the phone or emailing an existing union. And really a huge thanks goes out to the UAW for their, monumental win. And then the Teamsters, we all know they had a great success in their contract negotiations last year. And it's social media and even the mainstream media has been pretty cool about keeping those stories out there. So You're also seeing all these baristas and grocery store and retail, sectors that really you really never would have thought possible just a few years ago. So what does that mean for Kentucky? I think the excitement's here. The unions have a great responsibility to come through for the people that do want to organize. And I'm pretty confident in all the union leaders that we have in the state, the people that I've met with and worked with. I can't, spill the beans or whatever, but there are some huge organizing efforts underway in every part of the state right now with great big corporations and little small businesses, like we said, where people just want to have a voice at the workplace and some good working conditions and wages and benefits to go along.
Toyota, I don't know. We should see what happens with the UAW spreading throughout the South for sure. But Martina, you got a question for Dustin?
Yes. So in Tennessee and Alabama, we're seeing the entire statewide political establishment in those two GOP-dominated states lining up against union organizing campaigns, which clearly didn't swing the vote in Tennessee. And we'll see what happens in Alabama, which has started voting. Dustin, unions have traditionally found more support from Democratic politicians, while Republicans have tended to support corporate interest. How do you see that breakdown affecting the votes of the workers, both in the union vote and then perhaps later at the polls?
Well, I can speak for right here in Kentucky, and keep in mind this. I had done some lobbying, kind of put my toes in the water a little bit, but this was my first year as president with this last session. I really jumped into the deep end. And yes, you're correct. The Democratic Party is, really a strong ally of ours. They're great about communications. They're great about ideas. They're just an awesome ally. There are, however, some Republican legislators in Kentucky, as you know, maybe people listening don't know, that have a really good voting record. I mean, we keep a scorecard on every legislator. We even have some Republicans that really helped us out this last session in sponsoring and co-sponsoring and getting some bills passed and signed into law. So you can't necessarily go into it with the attitude that each Republican individual is anti-labor just because you know that the party is anti-labor. So it's important to try to make friends, I guess I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, as far as going to the polls, it's our responsibility as union leaders to educate and inform our members on who has their best interests in mind when they're there in Frankfort representing us, and hopefully the working people realize that your paycheck can be a lot more important than some of these other extreme ideas that really are nothing more than to get people's attention, get them excited, and to get them to vote a certain way. They don't amount to much, but I mean, we're talking about your paychecks, your health insurance, your benefits, your safety at work. To me, and I think most people, these are some crucial issues.
Yeah, and even a lunch break.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Who would have thought?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, do you feel like, I don't know, we're a right to work state, which I really hate that term. I hate that term. Is there something we should be calling it, Dustin? I don't know, the right to work. It's like, oh, who's going to stop? Yeah, who's going to oppose the right to work?
It's like right to fire.
Yeah. So, but we are that state right now under Bevins, right? Bevins signed that into law. Is there any prospects for, kind of clawing back any of that stuff? Obviously, Andy Bashir, somebody who I think has been very pro-union, has worked very closely and tried to advance kind of a pro-worker agenda. He hasn't gotten very far with the legislature, unfortunately. But yeah, any prospects for that kind of fundamental shift to the landscape?
We work on that. I know Bill Lonergan worked on it every year since, and there have been bills filed each year to repeal right to work and even amend it. We had some this past session. We worked with some Democrats on. We appreciate their help very much, and we're going to continue to do so. It's not something that we just say, "Oh gosh, right to work's here. We better just take our stuff and go home." We're going to continue to fight that. We believe in that very strongly.
And then one last question, I guess, for you, Dustin. So we've been talking about the election tonight. We saw a lot of interesting races. Were you guys involved? Do you do like a endorsement process at all, or there were races where you were actually out knocking doors or getting engaged or making donations? Anything you specifically want to recognize, or successes or setbacks?
Sure, all of the above that you just mentioned. But I believe when you count judge races and state rep, Senate, congressional, all that, there were close to 300 names on all the ballots. So what we do is we actually send out a questionnaire to everyone that files, and it's a 20-something part questionnaire, all related to labor-specific issues. Some people don't even take the time to respond, and that's fine. We don't go out of our way to get them to respond because we probably know how they would anyway. We have, on the opposite side of that, we have some people that as soon as they click send, they call you up and say, "Hey, did you get it? I'm pretty excited about talking to you guys," which is awesome. We love that. We even have some new candidates that wanted to meet with us, and they're totally upfront and honest. They say, "Hey, look, I'll be honest with you. I don't know that much about autonomous vehicles. Can we talk about it?" And they want to learn, which is great. Not everyone knows everything, and we're happy to teach that. So we made some good friends. I think we made some very good bets on our endorsements, and I'm excited about a lot of the people that you guys already talked about. I'm not going to go really into detail because you guys covered that, but there are some really strong candidates out there, especially coming from labor. So then what we do is we put out our endorsement list, and we let all of our affiliates, so local unions, CLCs, all that stuff, all those people, they can then decide if they want to contribute, knock doors, phone banks, send out mailers to their members, attend, campaign events and all that. And then this fall, we'll really turn the heat up, and that's when we bring out our membership and get people out there doing all that.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think if you've got skin in the game, you need to engage in that political process, right? And I think obviously labor sees the real impact of good policy and the challenge of bad policy, and labor is not alone. Obviously, if you care about women's healthcare, if you care about our environment, if you care about worker, other worker rights issues, the legislature is going to affect our lives, and it's really important that if you care about those outcomes, you get involved with the races wherever it makes sense for you. But I'm glad to hear you guys are active and engaged, and I'm with you though. I think we should wait till the fall to get involved. I just don't think it has to happen right away. Give us a break, a little bit, but. How about this? Could you work with Progress Kentucky, AFL-CIO, Progress Kentucky? We can find some other folks maybe. You can do you can only run a campaign for 2 months before the election. Do that in Europe. I don't think this is a crazy idea. I think it works in other countries. I just don't know.
Be careful what you wish for, because some of these liberty and freedom people, they may come out with some stuff that, similar to that, but maybe it may end up biting you.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll always watch that Liberty Wing. If you find yourself agreeing with them, you might want to ask some fundamental questions about what you're up to. Awesome. Any final thoughts about the state of labor in Kentucky, or anything people should know about the work you're doing with the AFL-CIO, Dustin?
I appreciate the opportunity to come on, and I'd like to let people know that organized labor has had positive growth in the last 2 years in Kentucky. We are also the highest union density in what they consider the 15 southern states, what I call the Southeast. So we are at 12% union density for all workers in Kentucky, which is a pretty good number. So Kentucky's a union state, despite all the red districts and despite the House and the Senate. It's pretty got a pretty good worker vibe, you know. So I think we're going to continue to grow, and we're really thankful for all the strong work of all the unions and the attention that they get. We're just going to continue to feed on that. And, you know, as long as you see these record corporate profits, shareholder payouts, and cost of living, and people complaining about, you know, they can't afford this, can't afford that. All they're doing is adding more fuel to our fire to get people to join and form a union. So we're going to continue to, you know, keep the message out there that life's better with the union.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the fact that, you know, we're seeing corporate profits at an all-time high, the same time we're seeing these kind of significant increases in the cost of living, right? You know, that there's a clear link there, and this is not just natural inflation that's happening. I think there's a lot of profit taking that's happening right now, and I hope that drives a lot more people into the kind of union fight for sure, for better, you know, better equality in that economic system for sure. Because right now,
Absolutely.
it's all on the top for sure. Awesome. Thank you, Dustin. I hope we'll have you on again. Let's keep in touch about, you know, the important fights you guys are undertaking, because we're, you know, we always want to help support our union friends and just telling the important stories of the work you're doing for sure.
Okay. Thank you all. Nice meeting everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So very cool to meet Dustin, new president of the Kentucky State AFL-CIO, filling the big shoes of Bill Londergan, who of course has been on our show a number of times and was a kind of stalwart supporter of, you know, smart progressive politicians and politics throughout the state for a very, very long time. Cool. So I think that's most of our show. We got, wait, we do have a call to action. Of course, there must be a call to action. We're not just here to talk. We got to get people doing stuff.
So it's May 22nd, which means it's 174 days until the election. If you're like me, you're hearing that in your head a lot. A little stressed out about November 5th coming up. And while there are some really important races going up and down the ballot, we are the kernels of truth. So we're going to be honest here. Kentucky has a 0% shot of factoring into the efforts to keep out our nation's most famous defendant in courthouses out of the White House. Yes, no, it's a foregone conclusion. But fret not, my dear friends, because you can still play a role in that race. What can you do? I'm so glad you asked me. You can help write postcards to voters in 11 key states. So the group is Postcard to Swing States will mail you free postcards, voter lists, very important, and instructions with proven message options. You will have to provide the stamp, but it's basically like, you know, well, I don't know if it's tax deductible, but it's promoting democracy. So you provide the stamps, you mail the postcards to voters in October. So don't do what Nate would do and vote them in July. You do it strategically in October. There is the URL, and for all of you listening on our podcast, the URL to go to is turnoutpac, turnoutpac.org/postcards, plural, postcards. So yes, help write postcards to voters in 11 key states, and you'll know that you did something positive for democracy, because democracy really is on in the ballot box this November. And with that, I will bid you adieu and say, take it away, Martina.
Okay. Well, Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Invisible Project, the Commonwealth Alliance for Voter Engagement, CAVE, and are also proud members of Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Join us next week for another informative show We'll be joined by Representative Chad All from Lexington's 79th District. We'll hear his take on the legislative session and what the newly minted round of candidates could mean for the GOP supermajority in Frankfort. Production of episode 162 was by the wonderful and cherished Annabel Nagel. Thanks to Nate Orshan, who wrote and performed our theme songs. You can find more information and music at natosongs.com. If you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube, audio podcasts, and our show notes are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and wherever you can get your podcasts. If you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening right now. Logo and some graphic content provided by Couchfire Media. For more information, can be found at couchfiremedia.com.